Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Racki, and this is LTV. On today's show, I'm going to be talking to Daniel Hebert, who is the Director of Sales at Proposify. This is part 2 in our series about sales enablement. Last week, we talked about the overall basics of sales enablement, and on this week's episode, we're going to be chatting about who you really want to hire and what circumstances do you want to hire for sales enablement in your organization. Listen in as we have the chat. All right, so last episode, we talked about the basics of sales enablement and a little bit about how that person fits within the organization, but this time we're going to go further into it. So let's say a company, whoever's watching this or listening to this, they're on board, they want to hire sales enablement, or they want to start building that into the organization. What does that person look like from a skills standpoint? Who should they be looking at?
So I think the actual way to figure that out is you first address what are your bottlenecks. Right. So, if you're in an industry that requires a lot of content, your sales team requires a lot of content, then you might end up hiring somebody with a marketing background because they need to create a lot of content. They need a design background. They need to be able to talk to the customer. If you have a large sales team that's, you have a really complicated product and you need to onboard, 50 new people in the next quarter, then you might hire somebody from a learning and development background or HR background to build out, curriculums and academies and course material. So it really depends on a couple things, right? So the maturity of your sales team, again, are you, a $1 million ARR sales team where your VP of sales is going to also be your head of enablement and you need somebody to come in and run sales operations? Or are you, $100 million company where there's a lot of complexities and you might have multiple people on your enablement team, and who is that person? What's their background?
Yeah. So, and we touched on this last episode too, but we're kind of thinking about sales enablement almost like a product manager within a software company, which is very different from DevOps. So sales ops and sales enablement are two different roles. Product manager is that more kind of diplomat that bridges together all these different departments. But from what I'm hearing from you is that the skill set is very different depending on the organization. Like you're saying that sometimes a sales enablement person can be more of a marketer or more of a content creator than an actual, like, say, sales coach.
Absolutely. It's like, again, it depends on where you're at in your sales process. And if you identify that the company has a coaching problem, right, then you have to have somebody that is a dedicated coach. So they need to come from a coaching background. So most likely they come from a sales management background. Usually when a company kind of first starts with sales enablement, they don't really think about all that stuff. So they don't really look at, okay, where are the big bottlenecks that we need to address? So they'll either promote somebody that was like a top performing AE into a sales enablement role. Does the skill set transfer? Maybe, maybe not. Or they'll hire somebody from like learning and development. But really it's, we have trouble with activities and coaching and hitting our metrics. Well, will somebody from a learning and development background actually know how to do that? Probably not, because they've never really dealt with sales metrics before. So it really depends, and it's kind of a hard answer. It's really hard to hire the right sales enablement person because there are so many backgrounds that they can come from.
And nobody goes to, much like product management, nobody really goes to school. They don't go to a university and study sales enablement. It's sort of a thing that you figure out. Well, it's a newer discipline, and it's also, as you say, you can have different backgrounds and different skill sets. So I guess the question is, if you identify this need in your organization, and let's say it's a content creator, that person that you hire may not even know that they are a sales enabler.
Totally.
Right?
Because it could be, hey, you know what? We have a marketing team that's focused on lead generation and brand and all that stuff, but the sales team needs certain documents created, and it's a little bit drier. It's a little bit, more case study formats.
Which marketing teams typically hate doing. I mean, they do it to help the sales team out, but it's usually, I think a lot of marketing teams don't think of like building rate sheets and demo decks and things like that for the sales team as being their core job of what they do. It's kind of like, okay, cool, you need this, we'll do it for you, but it's not their full-time focus.
Totally. And in some companies, in some industries, that's really important, right? In some companies, you need a really in-depth proposal in order to close a deal. Or you need to have multiple different presentation decks, or you need to create, demo scripts. All of these different things depend on, what industry you're in, how big your company is, how many other resources from the company do you get? Is enablement a company-wide effort, or is it an identified need that, nobody's doing enablement, so somebody has to do it full time? There's all sorts of different variables there that will determine who do you hire as an enablement person.
I like to say enabler. I don't know. That just sounds
Enabler.
cooler.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, the problem I have a little bit is that I feel there's some blurred lines, especially when you talk about coaching, where let's say you have a coaching problem in your organization, or just sales reps need to be told better how to be consistent in how they position the product and how they demo. I mean, to me, is that not just your sales manager or the person who's overseeing and leading those people?
Yeah, you hope that your sales manager's a good sales coach, but a lot of people don't have experience coaching, right? It's a very different thing. Like, a lot of people can manage and they can look at reports and say, hey, you know what, here are projects and you need to get this done on time. And like, that's more the management piece. But the coaching is like, you're running your reps through self-discovery and asking good questions to get them to, realize what they need to be working on and what they need to improve on. There's certain skill sets that lend really, really well to that. And a lot of sales managers don't come from that background where they're actually coaching. So if there is a coaching problem, then you have to have somebody that's really dedicated, that's good at coaching, that's dedicated to coach the reps. And it could lie with the managers if you've hired coaches instead of managers. But a lot of companies don't hire coaches, they hire managers, right? And then they say, hey, you now have to manage 20 sales reps.
It's so funny because it feels obvious to me, maybe it's not obvious to everyone, that the person, if you're going to take somebody who's really good at sales and really knows how to close and hit quota, and you're going to level them up and have other people report to them, that's just a natural job, at least in my mind, of a manager, is you have to make those people better.
Yeah. But so how do you do it, right? A lot of people don't go through that experience.
Right. They don't know how to coach. They need to be coached on how to coach.
Yeah. Right. So that could be a function of sales enablement, that the enablement person comes from a coaching background and coaches the coaches, right? Coach the coach.
So even though, as we've already said, it really depends on the main problem your organization is having. If it's a content issue, if it's a lead issue, if it's a coaching problem, there's all these different disciplines of sales enablement that are kind of like specialties. But in your mind, what would let's say that it was even possible to find somebody who just covered all the bases and can do it all, or at least temporarily cover most of the key disciplines, what would that person look like? Oh, man. What would that unicorn look like in your mind?
It's so hard to figure it out. If you're new to sales enablement and you're gonna hire that first sales enablement person, somebody that has kind of a go-to-market strategy background, so product marketing, product management, that kind of stuff, where part of that role usually naturally includes a little bit of sales enablement. You're working with sales teams at a company where they were working very, very closely with a sales team that is also a good coach. To me, that would be probably the biggest, success indicator from, like, if you're new to sales enablement, that first sales enablement person. But they need to understand, even if they don't come from a pure sales background, they need to understand how the sales process works. They need to have played around with operations. They need to understand sales metrics. If they don't have a good understanding of that, it's not going to work.
Does that role to you exist only in software as a service or product companies, or can it also exist in, say, an IT firm or a consulting firm?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it through like any type of industries. It's this new role that's kind of evolving. In the past, it was mostly just called marketing, right? Because a lot of that stuff is just marketing anyways, or it was called HR because it was training, or it's called sales management. I think the ways that companies have evolved and the complexity of going to market and all the tools and all the things that people need to learn, and nobody's an expert anymore, so you need to develop experts. All of these market dynamics are kind of coming together and making the sales enablement role a thing. But technically, if all of these things were working really, really well, you wouldn't need a sales enablement person, right? So it's kind of interesting in that way, where
they're bridging a lot of gaps.
They're bridging the gaps, and that's like the role has emerged from that, market dynamic of the complexity of B2B sales these days. And this can be, you can be selling commercial real estate and you still need sales enablement.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Daniel Hebert about who you hire in a sales enablement role. I'd love to know what you think. What kind of skill sets are you looking for if you're going to hire for that specific role? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit like and subscribe so more people can get this.
This episode of Lifetime Value is brought to you by Proposify. Proposify improves sales productivity so your team spends less time creating proposals and more time selling. Start your free trial at proposify.com. And be sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a single episode.